Welcome to Keeping the Beat, an engaging web series hosted live by TNMEA in partnership with the CMA Foundation. Tune in weeknights, Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn from and interact with music professionals from around the globe, representing every facet of the vast world of music. Today is Tuesday, July 7th, 2020, and this is our 58th nightly program, I'm proud to say. My name is Julie Hill, and I'm chair in the UT Martin Music Department and also a proud co-creator of Keeping the Beat by TNMEA. I have the honor of co-hosting tonight's program with my dear friend and UT Martin Music alumnus, Edward Sargent, who is the tour coordinator for Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Tonight, Ed and I have the distinct privilege of speaking with iconic rock and roll Hall of Famers Joan Jett and Kenny Laguna. We encourage viewers to interact with Joan and Kenny by submitting your questions and comments via the live stream with the assistance of our Keeping the Beat members, Alexis and Catherine tonight. On Joan and Kenny's team, we've got the wonderful Gabe, who's on assist to share some really cool photos as well. One disclaimer, while this is being live streamed, it will remain on the Keeping the Beat Facebook page forever, so your comments will also be a part of the archive. I'm gonna hand it off now to Ed to get us started.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here and have all of you with us this evening. I've had the distinct pleasure to work for Joan Jett and the Blackhearts for the last 14 years. And I want to share some very powerful words written by tonight's guests for a very important event that we're going to talk about later. But to me, really defines the people, the musicians, the iconic figures that I have come to know and love. I come from a place where rock and roll means something more than music, more than fashion, more than a good pose. It is the language of a subculture of integrity, rebellion, frustration, alienation, and the glue that sets several generations free from unnatural societal and self-suppressions. Rock and roll is political. It upsets the status quo. It stirs revolution and a fight for human rights. Rock and roll is emotional. It is my pleasure to introduce my friends, mentors, and my employers. Joan Jett and Kenny Laguna, please welcome to Keeping the Beat.
Hey, Ed, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Joni?
I'm great.
Thank you so much for doing this, you and Kenny, for doing this. This show means so much to us, and I thank Julie so much and her vision.
Yes, Julie, thank you. It's great to see you too.
Honored.
Hey, Ed and Julie. That was me saying hello.
Hello, Kenny. Joan,
it's nice. Let me just say, it's interesting, guys, for me to be able to see Ed in this different, different light. It's a different side of you, and you've never had to interview me before, so.
You're right. It is funny asking you questions that most of I know the answers to.
Right.
But for the sake of sharing it with the audience, we have a limited amount of time
to cover. So go. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I love this because your career is so multifaceted, Joni, that it covers so much ground from such an early age. I mean, you had hits so early, and I wanted to talk about the early days. Being born outside of Philly and living in Pennsylvania and on the East Coast. My first question really is about how the moving out to the West Coast had an impact on your life musically.
Did it have an impact?
No, how it had an impact on your life musically.
Well, I guess, initially, oh my God, look at that hair. That's 13-year-old frizzy hair. God, I forgot the question. Okay. On the East Coast, I guess I really started to get into rock and roll on the East Coast because I was at the age where I was, 11, 12, and starting to pay attention to guitars instead of the Osmond Brothers.
Yeah.
And, so, it started on the East Coast, but I read about this club while I was on the East Coast that was in Los Angeles called Rodney's English Disco, Rodney Bingenheimer's English Disco. And they played all the sorts of, all the English hits that kids in America didn't hear, like a lot of Bowie stuff, like Bowie was a big one, but you know, he had lots of hits in England,
Yeah.
but here he only had a few.
Yeah.
But a lot of other bands like T-Rex, Slade, The Sweet, Suzi Quatro. So that was, I got it. Wanted to hear that music, and finally, when my family moved out to California, I was able to go to that club and see this thing that I read about in rock and roll magazines. So it was Circus Magazine, if anybody remembers that
Sure.
old rock magazine. And there used to be a column about Hollywood. And so when I knew we were moving out there, I was reading it. So
It's amazing.
so yes, I guess my focus got more intense once I moved out to California.
What imprinted musically, what imprinted you to choose the guitar over any other instrument, would you say?
The rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
The rhythm. I look at myself as kind of a combination between a guitar player and a drummer. Because I do a lot of the same fills that the drummer winds up doing. Like we'll be playing the same thing, strum wise and hit wise. You know, so to me, I never wanted to play lead guitar. I wanted to play rhythm. You know, just solid, connecting with the beat, connecting with the body. The way the bass, the way the drums, you know, I felt like I was part of the rhythm. Yeah, I am, you know, it's part of the rhythm section, but that was where my heart and mind and body was, you know. I wanted to do that and not play lead guitar.
Sure, sure.
Didn't do anything for me.
Tell us a little bit about your reunion or your union with Sandy West and kind of the formulation in the early, or the formulation of the Runaways, the group. How did that come to be?
Yeah, well, I mean, God, it's so crazy because it sounds like it was a fantasy, but it really happened. So this club I was telling you about, I would go to, and I was thinking about, if I want to play guitar in a rock and roll band, there's got to be other girls here in Hollywood that want to do the same thing. So I started putting feelers out to my friends at this club. I heard this. One friend of mine was a guitar player, but it turns out she wasn't a guitar player. She was a songwriter and wrote lyrics. And she told me that I should meet her producer, who was a guy named Kim Fowley, her publisher. And Kim Fowley is a very strange character in a lot of ways. He's hard to describe in, you know, one word, but you know, you're either really freaked out by him and very afraid of him, or you find him amusing. And I guess I found him amusing. But initially, I'm screwing up this story, but I got word to him that I play guitar and I wanted to form an all-girl band. And he called me one night and scared me to death because I was so shy and naive, really. I didn't know anything about anything, certainly not about being in a band. And he asked me if I had any demos. I didn't even know what a demo was, okay? For real. That's how naive. So, you know, I mean, so I figured I screwed that up and, you know, hung up, and that was that. A couple days later, the drummer, Sandy West, was up in Hollywood with her friends. She was from the South Bay in Huntington Beach down in California. And she came up to hang out at this restaurant called the Rainbow. And when it closed at 2:00, all the people, all the famous rock stars and stuff would hang out in the parking lot and talk. And so that was well known. And so I guess, you know, people would come up to gawk. And Sandy went up and was, I don't know, I guess hanging around, and she recognized Kim Fowley. I don't know how, and went up to him and said, I play drums. I want to form an all-girl band. And he said, that's really weird. I just met a girl who plays guitar. You should give her a buzz. Sandy did. Said, let's get together. I took 4 buses to her house in Huntington Beach with my guitar and black leather jacket in hand. And went to her house and we just jammed on really basic, like Wild Thing kind of progression, just very basic stuff. And, we hit it off really well. Sandy's such a powerful drummer, very John Bonham was her idol. And
Right.
so she played very much like him. And so we called Kim up, said, listen to this, and put the phone down and played for him. And he said, let's do it. Let's go form a band. So we started looking for other girls to audition. And we did, very quickly, and formed the Runaways.
Mm-hmm.
Through a couple different iterations of the band.
Of course. And through the course of the Runaways' existence, at what point did Toby Mamis come along that eventually led to your reunion with Kenny?
That would have been pretty much towards the end. I'd say 78, late 78.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's Toby right there.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, and Toby worked with Blondie and a couple of New York bands. And, he wound up handling the Runaways for a little bit, right at the end of the, pretty much the end of the band.
End of the
about
run.
The last 8 months or so.
Right. Right. Let's transition, Julie, if we can. I'd love to get Kenny in here and get Kenny's early days story, and then we're going to put it together, how the reunion came and where it went from there.
Beautiful.
Right.
I'm going to, before I start to ask Kenny a couple of questions, want to give you all just some stats so you'll feel good. I mean, this Zoom thing is a little weird because it's just like the four of us chatting in our living rooms, but we have live viewers right now from all over the United States, but from Iceland, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Uruguay, Canada, and Australia. So that's pretty awesome.
Love it.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, feel good
I'm
about
very aware you're all there,
I want to read just a couple of comments and then we'll get to questions later so we can keep it moving. But these are beautiful. From John Bentley, comment for Joan. You are my daughter's inspiration. I want to thank you. Jess Jones says, hey, Joan, you've been my inspiration for a long time. Keep rocking as you do. Sending love from Australia. Hope you can make it here again in the future. And we'll keep those coming in between questions. Oh, sorry. Also, the United Kingdom has just signed on. So, Kenny, I'm going to change it over to you here and ask you a few things. I was really fascinated to learn that your background is in classical music, if I'm not mistaken. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that and how the shift to pop music and then later rock and roll really started. So how did you go from classical music to the pop genres?
Well, I come from a Manhattan family. They lived in Greenwich Village. They were extraordinarily progressive people. And they were in the arts. My mother was a painter. My grandfather was a famous architect. My great-grandfather was an actor who was well known, started Actors Equity. So my family, they only respected people in the arts, and they thought people who only wanted money were materialistic. My mother's sister was a beautiful lady. She was a beauty queen, in fact, and she was a very smart lady and became very wealthy with her husband. And my parents, they kind of looked down on that, except I saw the beauty in both sides. Being a multimillionaire has a lot of advantage, and art is great. So my parents, they wouldn't even consider anything but classical music, and I wanted to play music. And they started me very young because that's how you become. I remember Van Cliburn was one of the people they wanted me to be, or Leonard Bernstein. And they actually knew a lot of these artists downtown. Leonard Bernstein was a guest at my house at one point. So that was my piano teacher won the Gershwin Award, which people don't know what that is, but it meant that the New York Philharmonic would perform a composition. So my piano teacher had written that and won, and Leonard Bernstein was the conductor, and that was my background. But then second grade, we snuck out and saw Jailhouse Rock, me and my friend Peter Oliver. And I saw Elvis. Elvis made a lot of money, and Elvis was doing art. And I horrified my parents by playing that kind of music, or trying to. And anyway, it's a long story. My Aunt Lucy Brown, who's in the song Mac the Knife, was a famous piano player. And she got that pop music of today is what Mozart was doing hundreds of years ago. And she kind of got through to my parents a little bit that, you know, it's not the end of the world if I was banging the piano like a drum. And somehow we came together because my parents accepted jazz as a credible form of music. And I got this jazz teacher and gradually was able to play boogie woogie because that's classified as jazz. And boogie woogie fit right into Jerry Lee Lewis. And by the time I was 12, I knew every song on the radio. And in a day when things were manipulated by the people who controlled the business, a lot of them were well connected. And by the time I was 12, I was playing in bars. I knew every song. And eventually I hooked up with the WMCA good guys. And I started doing high school hops. And I would work for $20 a day. And somehow that was okay. I ended up playing in bars. Everything was overlooked.
Kenny.
Oh, that's me with the Shangri-Las. Can you imagine? I was about 14 or 13. There's me with Andy Warhol.
Andy Warhol, yeah.
Wow.
I did a soundtrack album for him. And that's Bo Gentry, one of the great writers of all time. He wrote, I Think We're Alone Now, and many other things.
Kenny, that segues really nicely into, I want to ask a question about you songwriting and performing with some groups later. So I know that you were a songwriter with Tony Orlando and the Ohio Players, who I loved, and were a band.
No, the Ohio Express. The Ohio Players was a cut above in a way, but not in the punk world.
Got
Ohio
it.
Express did Yummy Yummy and Chewy Chewy.
Okay. And that you were a band member with Tommy James and the Shondells and Jay and the Americans and many more. So could you just talk a little bit about your early success as a songwriter and producer just out of high school?
Well, because I had proximity of being a New Yorker, I would hustle. And I had these songs I recorded at a place called Ultrasonic, I believe, in Hempstead. And I just recorded my songs playing the piano or whatever. I had a couple of demos, as Joan said. But, and I walked around the city and anyway, United Artists, somehow I got a record deal. And then they told me one day they bought Kama Sutra. Kama Sutra had the Love and Spoonful, which I thought was one of the great bands that it could be. So I walked over to Kama Sutra. And I met this crazy guy named Howie Kane from Jay and the Americans. He had been thrown out of Jay and the Americans for trying to choke Jay in the middle of Caramia. And he kept me waiting like for hours. But then he came and he says, "You want to be a songwriter here?" And of course I did. So I got involved with Kama Sutra. Now Love and Spoonful got busted. And Zally, the guitar player, panicked during the night and ratted out the dealers. It's just pot, but the dealers were hooked up with the FM stations, and it ended the career of the Love and Spoonful because then all of a sudden the stations wouldn't play the Love and Spoonful. So what did Kama Sutra do? They started a new label, Buddha, and Buddha, to survive, went into a different kind of music, bubblegum. And there was I at this record company, and we started making these records. And tell you the truth, I would do anything to get on the radio. So it wasn't like I was precious the way Joan is.
So you
know?
you started bubblegum, in other words. You were right there at the actual birth of it.
Well, the truth is, you know, that when we made Yummy Yummy, go ahead. You were going to say?
I know I've heard these stories before, but go on, go on. If you continue, Julie.
No, well, anyway, so we made these. It started, you know, I guess it was starting all around us. But
Watch your camera view, Ken. Watch your camera view. We don't want to
Oh.
look up your nose.
Martin
Sorry.
Scorsese here. Oh, I just knocked the ashtray over. Anyway, so we went in the studio one day. We did 6 tracks, and 4 of them were hits, but one of them was Yummy Yummy. And to tell you the truth, I thought it was flat singing. And, me personally, I didn't appreciate. The guy you saw in the picture, Bo Gentry, said to me, "This is smash," and I was like, "Really?" And sure enough, it was a smash. And then all of a sudden, we were making hits every day. I mean, maybe every day, but at least once a week. There was Goody Goody Gumdrops and Chewy Chewy. And then the Led Zeppelin of that movement was Tommy James. And Tommy was like, his stuff was a cut above. I think Tommy James, he should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, every record was different and innovative. And he sort of got grouped into the bubblegum, but, I think he was a rock and roller. But, Moni Moni, that was kind of bubblegum, but better. And what else do we have?
And Kenny's the famous dun, 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 and Moni Moni.
Organ. Yes. So
not everybody knows that.
And we did Shadows of Night had a hit called Shake. They also did Gloria, but we didn't do that record. We did Shake, and then we did follow up to Cinnamon. We did Archie's records like Banga Shangalang, and I mean, we became the go-to band. So there's a 5-piece band, and in our real lives, we were the Trade Winds, who had a couple of hits that we didn't do, and we just started being like the ghost band for a lot of different bands.
How old were you then, Ken? How old were you at the peak of this success? How old were you?
Well, I was a teenager. I guess when I was getting my toes wet, I was 16, and by the time we were peaking, I was 19, and then went on until I was about 20, 21, and then part of the reason was that we wanted to be cool, and we didn't feel very cool. Even, my wife, who I'm still with, I remember driving in my car, which was a British car, and it had 2 AM buttons and 3 FM buttons. And I remember Yummy Yummy came on, and she pressed the button, and there was Neil Young's Cinnamon Girl, and I said, "No, that's us on the, but you suck," she said. So, we had a complex. So because of that, the next thing you know, I was loading boxes for $60 a week, because you can get cold very fast. And, so all of a sudden, bubblegum was out. And I think we caused it.
Kenny, that kind of leads into actually, I think, the next thing that Ed and I wanted to talk to you all about. And that's, we've talked about your careers individually and your backgrounds, but then the coming together is sort of the next part of the interview. And I really want to just ask you, Kenny, time that you really remember seeing and hearing Joan and Toby Mamis, and what did you sense in her or see in her? What was the spark that made you go?
Okay, I'll try to do this fast, because there's like, the universe and the rock and roll universe did some amazing things. It started, there was a fella named
Look at that picture, Kenny.
What?
You missed it. You missed the picture.
Well, that's
Anyway,
me and
go on.
Joan. That's us on stage when we wrote Victim of Circumstance, and she couldn't remember the second verse. So it was a club in Jersey, so I sang the second verse, but that's ancient history. There's a fella named Peter Meaden. Somehow he researched myself and Peter Anders, and he was the Who's first. But no, you got to hear this. He was the Who's first manager and producer, and he wrote Zoot Suit and I'm a Face, which were the high numbers, the Who's first 2 singles or recordings. And when I was loading boxes, he rescued us and he got us a deal with Motown in England called Mo West. And somehow we had a miserable year with too many drugs, whatever it was, and we went back to America. And then I get this call that they're working on a project that the Who was backing called the Steve Gibbons Band. And somehow I became the producer.
Now, I don't know Kenny yet, so don't get confused.
I produced the Steve Gibbons Band, and I have a hit in England, and it saves my career. So here's this Peter Meaden. There's a publicist who manages Blondie and the Runaways with some other tycoon in New York. Wherever the hell he was, Peter Leeds. And that's Toby Mamis. But Toby Mamis' real job is being a publicist, but he's a visionary kind of guy. And I meet him because he's publicizing the Steve Gibbons Band. And he keeps telling me about the Runaways and how I should produce the Runaways. And, they sounded intriguing. I was more interested in meeting 5 crazy girls who could play rock and roll. Now, I didn't know if they were good or not because most people told me that they suck. But it just sounded so interesting that these 5 girls were in a rock and roll band and they were traveling around Europe. So I was a little interested, but I never liked that. And then they were going to do an album and I was going to go downstairs, get a taxi in England, the Mayfair Hotel. I get down to the lobby and I run into this guy, Matthew King Kaufman, who's Berserkly Records. And he says, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Amsterdam. I'm going to audition for a band called the Runaways. He goes, they lost their lead singer. There's nobody left that's worth a shit in that band. He goes, why don't you come with me and produce Greg Kint and Earthquake? You work 5 hours a day, all the pot you can smoke, and I'll put you in a spa in the Bay Area. And it's winter in Amsterdam. It's summer, all the time in California. He goes, and you got the job. You don't have to audition for 5 crazy girls. So that sounded like a good idea to me. And you got to realize I'm an independent producer. I could go up there and the girls hate me. So I called Toby and said, I got another job. On the way to the airport, this all happens. So
typical men.
Don't make this agenda thing. This was an agenda thing. I'm with the
break.
president of the company. I'm auditioning.
Standard crap. The Runaways suck. We could blow most bands off the stage. Give me a break.
Listen, you made yourself the best deal ever happened. Let me explain. So then I go to California and Toby calls me again and says, the band is breaking up out here. This John Alcock, the producer, is causing trouble and they're going through all this crap. And I still didn't go. Then the band breaks up. And Toby calls me and he says, you gotta help me out. There's only one left in the band, Joan Jett. They got to do 6 songs in 8 days. And I'm in England now and they're in California or they're going to get sued. And the rest of the girls, they don't care. They just quit. They're never coming back. They're teenagers.
Yeah, there was no they. It was me.
But they said, no, the only one who cares about getting sued is Joan Jett. And
the only
I'm
one
going
with
to
any money, too, that they could take.
And I'm going to turn it down again. And my wife goes, I've been reading about Joan Jett. I look at her in the pictures. She pops out of this thing. The picture, she's a star. You should go meet her. And because of that, I went out to meet Joan. And on the plane, I sort of, in my head coming up with some ideas. And Joan, I guess, was doing the same. And I went to California and I went to the Riot House, the Hyatt House on Sunset Boulevard. And in walks Joan and Toby. And here's Joan in a black leather jacket. The way I remember it, there was razor blades hanging from it. And I just never seen anybody like that. It was like, whoa, what is this? And I think I loved her right away. Just walked in but then we started the thing. We wrote a song called You Don't Know What You Got, which is on the Bad Reputation record. Still one of my favorites that Joan and I ever did. It was the first song that we wrote and recorded, like, bing. And she goes in that song and she starts going, oh, baby. And I said, that's it. I'm in love. This artist reminded me of Darlene Love. Not that it sounded like it, but the reckless abandon, the soulfulness, but it's rock and roll. It's not white, it's not black, it's not 16, it's not 50. It's just pure rock and roll like Darlene Love. And I said, I'm going to help you get a record deal, but I had no idea what I was signing up for. And I'll pause there.
No, 'cause you thought it was going to be easy to get me a deal.
Yeah. So you go into, now I know the story about Rampart Studios and your association with Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey, and how they basically opened up their studio to you, yes, and said, pay us when you can. And that's where you did the Bad Reputation album. Is that correct, Joni?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
So
Well,
then,
remember, it goes back to Peter Meaden, who introduced me to The Who.
Yes.
right, and you did some work with The Who, and that's how that whole association comes. So when you bring this album back, is it correct that you take it and send it to 23 record labels, and they?
Well, it not quite that simple, but yeah. We made the Bad Reputation album. We got it on the radio, and we were touring, and they were closing highways in the Northeast, 10, 15 miles away from the gig. It was like Woodstock when Joan would play in the Northeast. Still couldn't get a record deal. We printed it up ourselves, and we were selling like crazy. But remember, I Love Rock and Roll, we had the song. Jonah recorded it with the Sex Pistols. We had the song. And some of the stations were playing it, and we were holding back because we wanted to get a record deal before we recorded that song. We weren't sure it was going to be a hit, but it just seemed like maybe it was, and we better have our ducks in a row.
I know.
But Bad Reputation and Do You Want to Touch Me were doing great. And we thought You Don't Own Me would be a hit. So we went to a few record companies like that. Then we recorded I Love Rock and Roll, the whole fucking album. Oh, the F word. We recorded the whole album and went around with that and played it for everybody. But you want to hear what's worse? Not only did I have these relationships, but Bill Kerbishley, manager of The Who, had Pete Townsend on.
I have a second to read these things.
He had Pete Townsend on the charts. My Love opened the door. And we had Lieber Krebs, who had like 10 metal bands like AC/DC, Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Scorpions. Both those guys were saying, would you help our friends? You don't even have to pay them. Just put their record out. And they still turned us down.
Clive Davis, there you go. Song search. We would require a song search. He heard Bad Rep, I Love Rock and Roll, all listed at the top. So he needs a song search for I Love Rock and Roll. Good ears.
Guys, then when did it really shift?
Well, funny enough, the Bubblegum King was Neil Bogart, and he saw the names on the album. That was a funny bit because I used songs from some of our friends from the Bubblegum days, and there were just some names that caught his eye, including mine. And so he said he'd go down and see Joan, and he and his wife Joyce, who were visionary people in record business, they liked Joan's live act, and we started working with him. It made a difference. And when I Love Rock and Roll came out, truth is, it was an unstoppable record, and Joan's touring and her karma and the fact that record was unstoppable. Those things, and there was a lot of karma involved too, and we worked our asses off. But that was the kind of record. Like Touch Me was the same thing. Joan never really had a hit that wasn't instant and unstoppable. I had a couple of them, like Moni Moni was like that. When it got on the radio, the phones lit up, which we don't have that anymore. But there'd be all these phones in the radio station, And when the kids heard something they couldn't believe how good it was, they would call the station because they want to hear it again. And you would see the phones light up in the radio station. And that's how I Love Rock and Roll was. And that's how I Hate Myself for Loving You was. Because nobody ever wanted to play Joan Jett. So that's why we're so lucky. We still have our masters. They are on Blackheart Records.
One point I would really love to make with the audience, and especially the young musicians, that they really understand that it was not always $1 million tour buses and private planes. That
Not at all.
You guys worked your butts off. Look at this van. That's your first van, right, Joni?
I mean, not at all. That was
Right.
not, it was a
The
lot
first-
of hard work and a lot of uncomfortableness,
Yes.
uncomfortable
Well, we
travel.
upgraded to a little crappy motorhome from that van. That van you see, that was a whole operation. We used to get one room, and Joan would sleep in the room, and then in the morning, all the boys who were sleeping in the motorhome would sneak in and take a shower.
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing. Very few bands get the opportunity now in the club settings and to work the radios, because the radio is such a different animal now, to actually have the opportunity to do that.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it was a whole different, I got to remember the music business was a different thing then. I mean, everything from requests, like, they still took requests. Fans could request songs. You had regional hits,
Right.
I mean, it's just a completely different.
And the drinking age was 18, which was a huge difference.
I'm sure, especially for your audience. Joan, how did you deal with that kind of rejection, 23 rejection record labels? I mean, did you ever doubt the sincerity of your direction musically with what you had and your dream and your goal? That's what I want our viewers to really know.
No, I never doubted what I was doing. I knew exactly what was going on. I knew, and I knew it from the time that I picked up the guitar. From the second that I went to a guitar teacher when I was 13, and I said, "Teach me how to play rock and roll." And he said, "Girls don't play rock and roll." And I'm like analyzing that in my head, in my little 13-year-old head. And what I knew was, he doesn't mean that girls can't master the guitar, because I'm in school playing, clarinet with girls playing Beethoven and Bach on cello and violin. He doesn't mean we can't master the instrument. What he's saying is you can't play rock and roll, because rock and roll by its nature is sexual. So if a woman or a girl is playing rock and roll and singing about rock and roll, it's going to be sexual to some degree, even if you're not singing about sex. Rock and roll is a sexual thing. It hits you right there, or it should, if it's good and done right. I'm not saying that everything has to make you horny. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's, no, I never doubted it at all. I knew that it was, this huge, not seeing women as capable of doing that, or not liking strong women. They were intimidated or threatened, and you could see it in those letters. All those letters, you think either they don't listen to what people send them, or they can't hear hits, or they've already made a decision. I don't want to deal with her. I know about the Runaways. I don't want to deal with Joan Jett,
Right.
and just write me off ahead of time. But, once I had Kenny, once we were working together, and then obviously once we formed the Blackhearts, I felt like we had a little army, and it was us against the world who didn't get it, and but a lot of people got it. So there were plenty of people that got it, and fans that helped us all along the way, and were very, very passionate, and still are.
I don't completely agree with that. I think, first of all, there were a lot of people in the business that didn't like punk music. You got rejected because, first of all, a lot of people didn't like punk music, just on the image of it. They didn't realize that the punks were like hippies. They just had a different fashion.
Right.
And the other thing that I ran into was when you have your own sound, people have trouble listening to it. They're always looking for what's out now, which means they're 6 months behind. Remember something. The Beatles were trying to sell themselves in America for a year, and they got rejected, for instance, in Mercury. For every week for 52 weeks, they were rejected. So I disagree with you on that. I don't think they were against you. It's curious that every Runaway got a record deal except Joan Jett. But I think it was because you were dark and the tattoos, I didn't
have tattoos then.
Well, whatever it was, I think it was a punk fashion.
And I didn't have big tits.
I don't think it was that.
Oh,
What I really loved about it, though,
makes a difference, Kenny. Unfortunately.
What I think, though, the main point was really just that the perseverance and the hard work that you put into it, Joan.
Exactly.
You never lost focus for the direction that you wanted to go musically in your career.
You're always going to be told you can't do it. No, why would you do that? What are you, crazy? People are always going to try to shoot down your dreams. They just do. It's the way it is. I mean, I don't get that, where people respond with, what are you doing? You can't do that, instead of, oh, that sounds interesting. Give it a shot, I mean, that's just the default setting. So people are always going to try to shoot down your dreams. I say you got to go for it. Whatever it is that you're playing or doing or performing, you have to do what you love and what you believe in, what you can stand behind, what you can put your heart and soul behind, because that's what people feel and that's what people connect to. And that's what this is all about, is connection.
And really. A lot of what the light of day, that whole kind of thing in the movie, which we're going to move over into the movie side of your career. Julie, go.
Yeah, just speaking about passion, so you're finally making some headway, feeling like you've got your army, things are going much better, lots of success, and then an acting career, or in 1987, right, Light of Day with Michael J. Fox. And, Bruce Springsteen, and just want to ask you a little bit about how that came about and what that experience was like.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't exactly remember how it came about. I think I had auditioned for it, Kenny, didn't I? Did I read for it? Ken?
Yeah. There was a lady named Bonnie Timmerman who was a casting director for Miami Vice, and we turned down Miami Vice. We didn't want to do TV, and then she got this in her head that you would be so good with that part, and you read for it. Michael wanted it to be you, and he actually came for the reading or the screen test and did it. And you read for it, and everybody was rooting for you to get that part. And but Michael really helped you get that part because he didn't read for most of the actresses that tried for it.
And Michael was just awesome. He was so friendly. If I'd met him and he was not friendly, I probably would have not wanted to do. Obviously, probably not wanted to do the project. But I don't know. But Michael was so wonderful and so giving, which I hear that is not par for the course in Hollywood. I mean, he gave me
well, the part was Joan's to steal, and Michael helped her steal the part. I mean, it was just the way it was written that Michael helped Joan, and in ways that some actors would have been selfish, and he wasn't. He just he was at the height of his career,
but also things like giving me tips about my key light. Like here's how when you have to walk into a scene and you got to hit a mark, and you don't want to look down to find your X, and so he said you got to find your key light, feel the light. You'll feel the light on you. So that's how you find your spot, because it's all lit for that. So if you just feel your light, you'll get to the spot and you won't have to look down. And, so things like that would take you probably a while to learn, just doing it naturally.
Yeah.
But it was a really good experience from that side. I thought the actors were all really, decent and nice to me and everything, and I was comfortable. But it was a tough work environment. It was a long shoot. It was not a, uplifting kind of movie. It
You
was
got it
8
from
months.
Cleveland, right?
It was a couple months in Cleveland, a month and a half, I think, in Cleveland, and the rest in Chicago.
There were some difficult people there.
Yeah.
None of the actors, but there were others who were difficult.
Joan, can you contrast that very positive experience with Michael, and I know there's some people were difficult, with 2000 Broadway Rocky Horror Picture Show? How different was that to be on Broadway?
Wow, that was wild, scary, because it's live and it's intense. It was very intense. 8 shows a week. It's very hard work, I was into it, and I loved it. But when I was done, I was like, I can't believe how hard these people work. It's a real intense schedule. But I loved it because I loved the show. I knew the part from the movie, the original movie, by heart. So I didn't really need the script. But
I might want
I
to
enjoyed
mention
it.
one thing. I want to mention one thing. When we did that particular project, they told us that these guys are dead, ready for their graves before they miss a show. And Joan went through her entire contract without missing one show. A Tony winner named Jared Emmett almost made it through, but 3 weeks before the run, he had such a bad flu, they sent him home. But Joan was the only one, the rock and roller.
Yeah, the
made it
flu
through.
went through everything. It went through the whole thing, but me.
That's
I
right.
believe that because Joan, I mean, I've traveled with you for 14 years. I've seen you perform in the most unbelievable situations, and I've seen you feel terrible in the dressing room, get to the side of the stage and hit that switch. So that does not surprise me a bit that every time it was showtime that you were there,
Yeah, I mean, it was just hard work. It was fun.
And-
It was
And there's
intense. It was fun.
another parallel thing, and I'll do it quick. There was a really well-known online producer when we did the movie. He had done Apocalypse Now, and his name was Claiborne. And when we started the movie, he sat me and Joan down and gave us a speech about drugs, not taking drugs in the movie. Well, we don't take drugs. And it was kind of a weird thing to just single us out. Well, let me tell you something. Everybody on that fucking set was taking drugs except me and Joan.
Obviously taking drugs.
It was unbelievable. That was another one.
They sat me down and gave us the talk, like, oh, you rock and roll people, we don't want to see any, but they were, blatant.
Yeah, there was like white powder coming out everybody's nose on the set in the morning.
Must have been eating donuts.
Find a mirror to look in.
Yeah, but let's just keep that between us.
Yeah, for sure. Joni, moving ahead in the movies till we come up to the Runaways movie, which was, I had the good fortune of being on set with you every day. You remember we were running out and doing shows on the weekend and coming back. We were on the set every day. And for our audience, what was it like to see Kristen Stewart playing you? She just come out of Twilight. She was probably one of the biggest box office draws in the world at that time, and seeing her walk on set, capturing you every day. What was it like to see that and experience that?
It was pretty wild. It was really quite weird, in a good way. It was surreal. It was really surreal, and I'm sure she felt the same way to a degree. I mean, who knows? She deals with that all the time, playing people, but she worked really hard on it. As far as, she didn't have a lot of time, but she delved into every, I tried to really tell her everything I could remember, everything the way I thought, just tried to give her everything I could. But she did everything, even copying my body language.
Yes.
and things like that, which I noticed, maybe a week or so into it. I just noticed like she would just do certain things that I do with my body. And I'm like, oh, wow, I
Yeah.
do that.
I
And
remember a
just-
conversation that you both of you had in the dressing room about the way you walk, and she was copping the way you walk, and she's left-handed like you was, and she would throw her hand around the guitar and the neck like you did. You were like,
no, I don't think she's left-handed, Ed. She's not left-handed.
I think she is.
No, I don't think she is.
Okay. Well, anyway, she was copping everything about you that she was just like studying your every move when she was with you. And I just found it fascinating to watch her play you in the Runaways.
No, it was fun. I mean, I had fun. It was interesting, but I was focused the whole time. It was weird because you had to split. I was also a producer,
Yeah.
and I was a subject, so it was kind of, because you just had to. You couldn't go moment by moment in the Runaways movie. It was too much stuff, and so things were. Time frames were shortened and stuff like that. So, you have to get over that as an artist, as it being, your band, and it didn't happen just like that.
Yeah.
Well, you can't always say that. This is the movies,
Yeah, exactly.
But for the most part, yeah, I had a really good time.
Yeah. Moving on through to 2014, wanted to just hit the highlights of your existence with or your association with Nirvana, with Dave, and what it was like to do the induction for Nirvana and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well, I mean, it was two things at once. It was utter joy, utter, oh my God, the most awesome thing, especially as a fan, to be asked to play
Their biggest hit, Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yeah. That's what happens. You can't remember it all of a sudden. Smells Like Teen Spirit, but I was petrified at the same time, going, "Oh my God, Smells Like Teen Spirit," and I got to do this in front of people, And it was a blast, and I was not nervous for some reason right before it, and I had a great time. We just went out there and it just came out, but it was amazing to play with them and turn around and see Dave bashing on the drums and Pat on the guitar and Chris on the bass, and in the middle of that song and playing it. It's just crazy and so awesome for someone like me who's a fan too, and a rhythm guitar player. It was perfect because it was a rhythm guitar song, And then we went to a club after that and played a bunch of other Nirvana songs that we had all learned. So we did probably a good hour or more of Nirvana songs that night. It was
That's
great.
amazing. That's amazing. Which takes us right into the next year, 2015, just as we had started the Who tour. 3 dates into the Who tour, we flew to Cleveland as you and the band were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yourself. What kind of personal musical milestone, Joni, did that represent for you?
Musical milestone? I don't know. I really don't. I don't think I look at any of it like that. I was happy to win the award and stuff, but it wasn't a goal that I set out to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was just an amazing accolade that I was very proud to get. And I was overwhelmed with the way I was treated by all the fellow musicians. I was really, really overwhelmed by that. Mostly, I think, was what blew me away. With people that I knew, we'd our whole careers had kind of been spent together, parallel. We're all in the same business. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I knew all these people. I can't explain what I mean. It's just I know that bought Paul McCartney's Maybe I'm Amazed album. I forget what the name of the album is, but I remember listening to that in my room and then getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The first person to stand up in the audience, because they gave me a standing ovation for like 5 minutes. First one to stand up was Paul McCartney in the front row. And, that's really full circle. That's really full circle from when I'm like, I don't know how old I was, 12, 13, listening to Maybe I'm Amazed, and then cycling all the way around to him being the first one standing up at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Bizarre.
Joan is such a baby. She remembers she bought Maybe I'm Amazed. He's a Beatle. A Beatle stood up. That's who stood up, not Maybe I'm Amazed.
No, but it was his first solo single, Kenny.
I get it. It's just that, because you're a baby, you remember the guy who did Maybe I'm Amazed. And I'm saying, I'm amazed the Beatles stood up. He's a fucking Beatle. Never mind.
Yeah, but you're older than me, Ken.
He's a Beatle. The Beatles led the standing ovation.
I don't have to say more than he's Paul McCartney, Kenny. Everyone knows he's a Beatle. You say Paul McCartney.
Yeah, the guy who did Maybe I'm Amazed.
Yup.
It was an amazing evening, Joni, and the performance with the band and having Dave come out and Miley and Tommy James. It really was a very special night.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. In 2018, the documentary of your life, your association with Kenny and your partnership came out in the documentary produced by Carrie Ann Brinkman called Bad Reputation. I was fortunate enough to get to see so much of this, and tell, if you would, just share with our audience about how this came about with you and Kenny and with Carrie Ann, and just the dynamic of how this was produced. And it was debuted at the Sundance Film Festival.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, this was a Carrie Ann idea for years, I mean, she wanted to do a TV show, and she still does, and but I think she also, she realized what an amazing story, I guess it is, people are interested.
Yes.
I think it's just weird when you're the person people are interested in, oh wow, people are interested. But so I think she wanted to figure out a way to showcase that, our Kenny and my relationship, and how we work well together, just the whole career thing. So she set about doing this documentary, and Kenny and I weren't really involved, so we don't really know too much about. I mean, maybe Kenny knows more than I do, but it was really Carrie Ann's thing. She got the people, she got the footage, she did it all. So I can't really speak to it except seeing it as being the subject. I thought it was great. I thought it really told the whole story, and you really got the sense. I mean, to me, the word that stood out was perseverance. Yes. Is what I got when I watched the movie. Is you gotta stick with it. You gotta persevere, and that kind of showed it to me. The Runaways stuff, I was grooving during that, and then when it broke up, I was sad. It really evoked emotion to me. And I don't know if that's just because it was about me and I could relive it, or if other people felt the same thing. And I think that other people did kind of get that sense of it watching.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a lesson in perseverance, and the dynamic between you and Kenny's relationship, always working together for that cause. That, I think, was the underlying theme for the whole movie, which brought you up here. Joan, you've had, throughout the course of your career, the opportunity to work with a lot of musicians, actors, artists in lots of different styles.
Don't ask me that.
Take us into the Sunday night football theme. And as we're all big football fans, and with NBC and your collaboration with Carrie Underwood for the theme, how was that?
Oh, it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. It was something different. but it was I had a good time, and she was really into it and very nice person.
Yes, and I think the CMA Fest is going to be, I think they're putting that together to come out in like a week or so.
Is that me in a dress?
That was you in a dress. It sure was. Gabe, kick it back if you can.
It's
That
like
was
the
a-
red dress thing. What the hell was that?
That was a charity,
Yeah.
the red dress ball. And
No, that's
but
not.
yeah, the best
No, you
of
don't.
the fest. Listen, the best of the fest is on July 13th on ABC.
Yeah, July 13th,
13th.
ABC.
That's
Alexa,
a good one.
we'll put that on. We'll put that on the header so everybody can watch that.
Okay, I don't know what this is, but
Yeah, there it is, Joni.
oh God.
No, that was a very important charity. Yeah.
So
Joni,
go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah,
One more-
you go ahead, Jules. Joan, yeah, you got it, Julie.
Joan and Kenny, are y'all feeling okay on time? We've just got a few more things. Y'all
We're fine. We're
Okay.
fine.
making sure we're not wearing you
I'll
out.
tell you who's not fine. Whoever gave you that photo.
Well,
What do you mean?
Never mind. We'll talk about it later.
I want to ask you all a couple of questions that, I mean, this show is very much about inspiration and education, and just everything said tonight is absolutely inspiring to so many people. And I can't tell you how many comments I want to read very many because there's hundreds. So I'll try to get to a couple of questions at the end at least, but it's just a flood of comments about how inspiring you both are, and to so many people around the world. But I want to ask a couple of questions that are just about personal causes. I'm good friends with Ed, Joan, and Kenny, as you know, and I've been vegan for almost 8 years, and my husband's sitting here next to me, and we've got a herd of cats in our house. I know you're a kitty lover.
Yeah.
And
Well, I love them all. I would have a farm if I could, but I don't.
well, none of your kitties are in there with you, I guess, right?
Well, there's one here, and usually she's brave, but she's not crazy about FaceTime or the screen when she hears video and stuff. I'll try to get her over here.
We've got one in here. Oh, look at that. Yeah, but maybe, Joan, you could talk a little bit about PETA and the North Shore Animal League on Long Island that you're really...
And this is Farm Sanctuary. This one that the pictures are from.
I
Hey,
love
look
it.
at my hat.
Showing the pig.
Hey.
Yeah,
look at my
I
hat.
see that, Ken. I love it.
Yeah, that's the Farm Sanctuary hat.
That's right. That's right.
They're wonderful.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Well, I love animals, and I myself. I mean, Kenny's been vegan since he was 11. I probably went vegetarian in the late mid 80s, something like that, and have been vacillate between vegan and vegetarian. But when it's vegetarian, it's just a tiny bit of butter or a tiny bit of milk, but that counts. So I can't say vegan. But sometimes I am. But I think it's important that people be aware of animals and that they're sentient beings and they feel.
Well, now we got a bigger problem. The factory farming and eating these jungle animals has caused the coronavirus for one thing, and it causes a lot of these pandemics. So I'm just saying, I don't want to piss anybody off, but if everybody was a vegan, we wouldn't have any of these pandemics. Just saying.
That is probably true.
Yeah, for sure.
And there would be less starvation. It's like 16 pounds to 1, and then we're torturing animals.
Well, the thing is, it could be better to let it go this way because, then it'll people either get scared to eat meat and they won't eat it.
Nobody's scared. They're not even scared to not wear a mask. So I think we should go on to the rock and roll story.
Well, all right. But I mean, I remember when the cows they were talking about down cows, how people wouldn't eat meat. They stopped eating meat. And they stopped eating meat, right, initially.
Yeah, that's right. And all the meat places went out of business. Oh, no, they didn't.
I want to ask, I want to ask next about your major supporters of the armed forces and the United Service Organization. I know Gabe's got some photos to show on this one as well that I just loved. And I understand you were the first non-combatants downfield after 9/11 in Afghanistan, and that's just incredible. Look at these.
Yeah, that's a tank picture, right?
That's serious.
Yeah, it was pretty serious. It was very, very serious. Yeah, we were probably the first ones. The first time we couldn't, they wouldn't let us into Afghanistan because it was too intense. But we were right over the border in Uzbekistan and Pakistan. So those are the first two places that we went. And that was just Kenny and I, because they wanted to keep a light footprint. And we were actually, with a lot of the special forces guys that were, in the camp, wherever we were.
Did you have to wear like protective gear when you were walking around? And
no, I kind of wanted, thinking, should I have a helmet or a fucking flak jacket or something? Because Kenny said, we closed the war, and they said, you're in it.
There were times when we wear the flak jackets and times when you didn't. And there was it was way down range. It was way down range.
Yeah.
It was interesting going to the bathroom in the dark.
I just wanted to say that for me to go to Iraq and Kuwait and see what they went through over there was a life-changing experience, and I thank you for that opportunity. It was amazing.
Ed was a warrior. Ed was tough. Oh man!
When I went, what I was doing was, just saying hi to everybody, and so I'd go around to each unit. There's so many different units in one of these camps. All the language is gone, so I can't remember how to refer to anything properly. But each unit did something different. Some guys were the mortar guys, other guys were the tank guys, or
and there were black diamonds, the black diamonds that built everything. And
but that was a separate. You had different units within the black diamonds too.
Yeah, but the thing is,
so I go around.
It goes on 24 hours, so there's no time to sleep really, because everybody wanted to see Joan.
So I was up from like 6:30 in the morning going around to each unit, and I'd say, what do you guys do? And they'd tell me what they did in conjunction with everybody else. And so each unit would tell me what they do and explain their thing. So, and I, just talk and
walk.
Talk and walk, yeah.
Lots of walking, yeah. And the special forces guys, I remember those guys. Just looking at them over there in battle gear, how impressive they were.
Well, I mean, we saw different guys than you did in Iraq. It was a different, thing.
Yeah.
Well, we had the privilege of welcoming the horsemen out of Afghanistan, and when they came out, and when they went outside the embankment, they were outside the fort, and they didn't want Joan to go and visit them, and she just went nuts and demanded. So they put together some Humvees, and Joan went. And these guys, one of the groups, they're the only guys allowed to drink, and one of them, they were so drunk. Joan Jett walked into their tent that's out in the field, and they thought they were having a hallucination, these guys. They just spent 3 months with the Northern Alliance. it just blew their minds. Anyway, the next day they came and they berated her on the field. She was the first celebrity parade on a field since, who was it?
Martha Ray.
Wasn't Anne Margaret?
Martha
Ray.
Martha Ray.
Since Martha Ray. And they berated. They had a whole little ceremony. It came out. It was just unbelievable.
I want to step in and turn the conversation a little bit of a different direction, but also another cause. And Joan, you know, Ed and I know you see him with his tour manager hat on, but, you know, we're both percussionists who went to the same program, University of Tennessee at Martin, and that's how I came to be close with him as one of our graduates. But as a female percussionist, I would not pretend to have any of the struggle. Certainly very few men in my profession growing up, and I was a total anomaly, you know, and I liked that actually in a lot of ways. But I've made it a personal quest to make it easier for the next generation of women. Unfortunately, we've seen, well, fortunately, we've seen a lot of increases there, and I would assume that's in the music industry and what you do too with rock and roll, but not so much with race. There's still some systemic issues in our music programs, our public schools, where it's harder, I think, for Black students to have access to those types of things. But I want to turn it back around to the notion of you being an anomaly in a male-dominated profession. And I so respect you for the fortitude and strength it took to stick that out and make it happen. And you're such an inspiration to me and obviously millions of others. And we're in this age of girl power. You know, we see it's the Me Too movement. We see women stars in Star Wars and action heroes. And it's really fun to see that shift. And I would like to see you as with a cape on. You're like the woman music super action hero. I'm not saying this very articulately, but that's what I mean. But that takes, I think, fortitude, but it also takes having good mentors. And that's something I talk about a lot with my students, with students watching this show is we have to have good mentors and that look like us. And Ed and I had this great mentor in Nancy Matheson who taught at UTM. And if I was an anomaly, she was totally a freak. I mean, she was 38 years older than me and a woman percussionist that landed a university job. And I'm getting back to the point, a little bit of personal information about me and Ed there with our mentor, Nancy, and just say, have you been in a situation, or can you share a few mentors that you had, male or female, that really helped you along the way, other than Kenny? And have you been put in that position of serving as a mentor to women in the next generation where you feel like you can help? Sorry, that was a lot.
Yeah, besides Kenny, I don't really know that I had any mentors. You know, I really don't. I moved around too much. You know, I wasn't around, you know, people for any length of time. My family moved a lot. I was not in any place more than a couple of years. You know, so once I got in the Runaways, you know, we were on the road, so I didn't have time to have mentors. You know, in a way. So. You know, in one way, I guess, you know, as weird as it would sound, I guess, I mean, mentor, I don't know what that means.
Kim Fowley was a mentor, even though he wasn't a girl.
I was just going to say, he would have been my first mentor, Kim Fowley.
Sure.
Help teach me teach me how to write songs, you know, about form and just, you know, he taught me some things about music. And just the business and everything. So, you know, I got along with Kim Fowley good, and we had no issues.
Ed mentioned you'd been on The Voice and sort of served in a mentor role, maybe with Miley Cyrus. Is that the case?
Yes, she asked me to come on as a mentor, and I guess we were mentoring a singer. It was I don't really remember how that show goes, but you know, we were watching a girl sing a song and, you know, giving her critique, which isn't really my thing. You know, that's not really what I want to do, is mentor people that way. You know,
Miley's always been very candid about you as a mentor to her, you and Kenny both, not only for stylistically and how she should present herself.
I guess. I mean,
and Kenny business, you know, in dealing with her business side of it, that you and Kenny both were mentors to her. And I just think that's beautiful.
She's a beautiful girl. She is so smart and talented, and she can all the areas. She acts, she sings, she writes. She's going to be around for a long time. That girl is incredible.
Yeah.
You guys, we won't go too much longer. We've got just a couple more things to wrap up. Where we talked yesterday about the sensitive issues going on. There's many in the news right now, and I know we're going to play it cool there tonight. But one of the things we talked about yesterday was how musicians can use their star power to help push social transformation. And I think that's really crucial right now. And, you know, that's the kind of thing that you and Kenny believe very strongly in. That's evident to me. And, you know, through the years, we've had icons like Elvis and James Brown, Chuck Berry, who pushed those boundaries, who made people accept people of color. And I want to ask just maybe what are some ways you all think for musicians that are watching the program tonight and after the fact, what are some ways musicians can help our society be more inclusive? How can we push our society to do that with our music? For either one of you.
That's $1 million question.
Oh, boy, you know, yeah, I mean, if I knew that, you know, if I knew that secret, I mean, really, it starts way before anybody reaches music age, really. You know, we got a lot of stuff to deal with just systemically, starting with school, education, stuff like that. You know, until you deal with a lot of that stuff, a lot's not going to happen. You got to change the footing, the floor. Everybody has to start out on an equal footing and have that throughout their life. So, I mean, you know, but I don't know how you do that. I mean, just don't be, you know, be open to everybody, I guess is a good way to start right here, you know.
Well, I think we got to start putting ourselves in other people's place, to put yourself in another person's place. Then I don't think the racial thing is applicable. I mean, you know, like, have empathy. And you know, we were talking again about our troops overseas. So, you know, have a little empathy for those folks too. And they are, I think, unable to, or they shouldn't have any kind of racial thing, and they're out there in harm's way and protecting each other. And we have let them by proxy and forget them. And now we have the insanity of racial strife in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, we have to start putting ourselves.
Also, it's being, you know, it's being whipped up. So it's just, you know, people have to try to be with their better angels, you know, and don't be a jerk. Be a human being. Come on, man. Everybody's in tough times now. I mean, look, we lost our jobs overnight, you know, gone. So, you know, it hurts me a lot that I can't go on the road and can't play, can't tour. It's over. And the way people are acting, and it's just getting worse and worse, we're never going to be on the road again. You know, they're not going to get it together by next year.
But
if people
who have
start putting it together. I mean, we could go to Europe, but they won't let us in. We could go play there.
But people who have, you've got to consider all the folks that are on the breadlines. I mean, those people suffer. Don't forget them. Don't think it's okay just because you're not suffering. Think about them. They're our fellow human beings. I mean, we want to say fellow Americans, but fellow human beings. Don't let them suffer. We've got to work together.
I appreciate you guys taking some hard questions. I know it's easy to be dark in these times, but it's also when I see how many people are watching tonight and making such great comments and all the influence in a positive way that you all have made, and how many people are going to hear that, how you all feel about this. It's incredible.
We can change this. That's the thing.
Yes.
It's in our power to do it. And that's what's so, it's beautiful and it's frustrating at the same time, because it's nice to know that the people have the power, but unless the people are organized, we're all going in different directions, which doesn't really help anybody. So, you know, I just think there's enough
Yeah, if you
hate in the
search
world.
your hearts,
I love.
what every religion wants you to do, whoever you believe in, you know, that doing good for other people is the way to go. I mean, it's not a question.
No, definitely. And even if you're not into religion, you know, it's just a natural thing to want to be good. I think if you want to be bad, you've been hurt a lot in your early life. Sure, if you're just somebody that wants to go out and mess with people.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. Just be nice and respect one another.
Exactly.
Easy to say, but you know, harder to do and harder to get people to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you want it to come. You don't want to get them to do it. You want it to come from a genuine place where they want to do it. You know, and so, you know, look, people are gonna do what they do, and what was that?
I think Kenny's back. Oh, there. He's back.
But I hope they do the right thing, you know, for all of us. Whatever.
Yeah.
You guys, to wrap up here, what do you two want? What do you two want people to say about you? Like when people say Joan Jett and Kenny Laguna, what are the hopes that you would, the words that would enter their mind about each of you?
That I don't know, that I was fun, and I mean that the music made people happy, and that I was genuine, real, authentic.
I love it.
I like to say we're good people,
Yeah, me too.
and we were cool.
Totally.
That's beautiful.
Love it. Love it.
Ed, I'm gonna let you wrap up with the last part.
Yeah, Joan and Kenny, thank you so much. I miss you guys so much after spending so much time together in buses and hotels. I really just miss your presence and being close to you every day. And
Us too.
I love you so much. And you know, hopefully we'll get to the other side of this. And on the other side, you know, there's lots, you know, our live.
Come on, people, we can do it.
Yeah, we can. And then get out there and hit those stadiums, you know, with that stadium tour. I know Live Nation's certainly looking forward to it. And hopefully we'll just think positive and get to the other side. And thank you so much for coming on the show. We love you.
So on, Julie.
Thanks to all the fans too for tuning in, and really, we really appreciate it. And
Wear your mask,
we want to find ways to get out there as much as we can, you know, so we'll figure it out how to play music for you and engage and everything, because, you know, who knows how long this is going to go on. So I say wear your mask, because I wear one.
Yes.
So
I have a Blackheart
you
mask.
want to come at me? Come at me. Give me a break. Give me a break, really.
Oh my gosh, you all, I want to just make an apology to all the fans who are listening live right now. I am so sorry just the interview alone went an hour and a half. So it's really great stuff. And I knew y'all would want to hear that. And I didn't want to cut Joan and Kenny off with all the comments and questions, but it's just, it's amazing to see the outpouring tonight. And Joan and Kenny.
Can we do another show of just answering questions?
I'm great with that. If y'all want to do that, we can make that happen. So I'll do a little.
There might be part 2 because we never got to the questions.
Yeah.
And I can send them to you if you want to see them too.
Love it.
You know, it'd be fun to hear what people have to want to ask us and stuff from around the world. So
I'll make sure Ed has them for you.
Good night, Gracie.
So I'll do a little outro here, and then I'll stay on with the four of us for just a couple of minutes, and we'll be done. And then thank you. You've been brilliant this evening, and just very inspiring. Thank you both so much, and thank you, Ed. Okay, so here's the short outro. Tune in weeknights, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Time to watch Keeping the Beat live. And remember, please, to tell your friends about our program, which wraps up on March 15th. But sorry, that is not March, July 15th. But the archives will live in infamy. You can check out our upcoming artists on our calendar at tnmea.org/keepingthebeat. Special thanks again to Kenny, Joan, and Ed for a program I will never forget. This has been an amazing experience for me, and I was extremely nervous, so thank you for making it.
I hope your nerves went away, Julie. You were great.
Yesterday, actually, because you both were so awesome on the call, and y'all were so much. It was really funny. So it put me at ease. I loved it.
Yeah, how were you earlier when we couldn't get it together there? A little nervous, huh?
Y'all were great. It made me feel good. I could be human. So thank you so much. And everyone that's watching and listening, peace to you, and have a great night.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Peace. Good night. Keep rocking.